spotted.
Alright everybody, welcome back. So of course we are here today with the star of the Soviet tech tree and what is almost certainly the strongest plane, at least in terms of RRB, even if not in 1v1, in the entire game. Now of course this is the Su-27S, and while it is the first Su-27 version, I am really shocked that we got it where we'd only have like AIM-7Ms max to fight it. I was not expecting it to come with these kind of enemies. Now, when it comes to the Su-27, you're looking at a plane which has really good overall flight performance, though not the best, but an absolutely insane kit. Now, of course, you get up to 10 missiles. Now, compared to something like the F-15, for example, that does get 8, but 4 of those are the really unreliable AIM-7M. This has up to 10 extremely competent missiles. Now, of course, you can carry up to 6 of the R-27 series and 6 R-73s as well. Now, you get 10 missile pylons total, so you do have to choose for 2 of them if you want to take R-27s or R-73s. Personally, I would say that the meta loadout right now, at least in my opinion, is most likely 6 of those R-73s with all the furballs that we're getting. But the way it actually pans out is the outer 4 pylons, the ones with the wingtips and the one just inside of those, are R-73 only. The wing pylons that are about halfway down the wing, those are dual-purpose R-27 or R-73. So you can choose between the R-27ER or ET or the R-73, whatever you prefer. The inner R-27 pylons are unable to carry them, and my understanding of why is that they both, a lot of them don't have, a vision of planes in front of them, and partially because they didn't want to put enough coolant in there to actually support those inner pylons. I don't know if it was like extra weight or what exactly was going on there, but who knows. The R-73s are what I find the most fun to use in this jet, even though it did just whiff on that, and they are incredibly competent in the kind of close-range furballs that we have been getting a lot in RRB. 40G thrust vectoring, and you also get HMD. Even if this was a bad platform, which of course it's not, kind of like the 29 SMT when it first came out, the R-73s just kind of make the plane. Now, they aren't completely unflareable, but they are more difficult to deal with, in my opinion, than the AIM-9M. So of course the AIM-9M, what it does is it suspends tracking whenever it sees flares. The R-73 on the other hand, it shrinks down its seeker head field of view, so within a certain range it becomes almost unflareable, even front aspect sometimes, although of course you see at 2 kilometers it's not quite there yet. So I'm not going to be able to flare this R-73 right here, even though I'm 0 throttle and flaring, but the MiG-29 then flies past me and I get to go ahead and fire off an R-73 that he is often not able to flare. And you're going to get a lot of stuff like this, where sure, you might be getting taken out of the fight, but you can still get 1 or 2 more kills with your HMD before you actually go out. And that's only the R-73. You also get an incredibly competent kit of R-27ERs as well, up to 6 of them. And these are by far the best radar missiles in the game. As you can see right there, I actually unlocked it, and you might be freaking out because it's a SAR, right? It's going to explode. Well, these missiles can fly for, I believe, up to a minute without actually maintaining lock. Don't quote me on that. But they have this thing called internal navigation, if you can see right there. And so what that means is when you drop the lock, it remembers where the radar was last looking, is able to guide back on that. Then the data link can actually also direct it to where you were looking. And just like that right there, you have an F-15 that only got around 10 seconds of launch warning instead of, 30 or 40 seconds, however long it normally would be. Now, BVR isn't necessarily meta, and the reason why I usually climb is actually to drop IR missiles on people from high altitude when they're not paying attention in the middle of the furball. Just like this F-16 and F-15 right here. The R-27ET is incredibly competent, so if you want to run that along with your R-73s and R-27ERs, I will not fault you for that. It is a great missile. It doesn't have quite as much range as the ER, but is by far the longest range IR missile in the game. And of course, it gives no warning besides, just a little red diamond. So you can fire these things off from 8 kilometers plus rear aspect at sea level, and quite often these will still connect. They're also very flare resistant, and I just want to compare the flare resistance between the R-73 and the R-27ET real quick for a second. So remember how earlier I said that the R-73 is incredibly difficult to flare at close range? Well, that's because it has this thing called gate width, which is where the seeker head of the missile actually shrinks down after you launch it. So this size right here isn't what the missile is actually using once it's off the rail. it shrinks down to only 0.75 degrees, which is by far the smallest secret head of any missile right now. Which is why when this F-16 starts flaring right here, it just completely ignores his flares. Now the R-27ET on the other hand has a larger one at 1.33 degrees, but instead it gets better sensitivity to planes. As you can see right here, range band 0 is the missile sensitivity to non-afterburning planes. Range band 2 is the sensitivity to flares. Now the R-73 is already more sensitive to non-afterburning planes rear aspect than flares, but only by a small margin. The R-27ET is much more so. And this is why you'll see clips, for example, of people firing on F-14's rear aspect at 7 kilometers, and they are basically unable to flare the missile. This combo of missiles and the sheer number of them that you get just automatically makes this thing one of, if not the most meta planes in ARB. Now, flight model wise, it is not exactly what I was expecting, to be honest. So the compression at higher speeds was expected. If you look at any charts, the flanker was known for compressing at higher speeds, but the lower speed performance isn't exactly what I was expecting. I had heard rumors that it was supposed to lose a lot of speed when turning at lower speeds, but holy crap, I was not expecting it. It does allow you to pull off some pretty silly maneuvers like what I just did right there to dodge that R-27, but it also leaves you very slow and vulnerable while you're doing it, so it's definitely a double-edged sword. Now you can use that, funny low-speed pull to slot in behind people like I did right here, although unfortunately my R-73 decided to go silly off the rail, so I didn't actually get this really nasty reversal like I was hoping I would do. But when you're fighting or when you're playing the flanker, you can definitely use this to your advantage. It's one of those high risk, high reward things where, sure, you may lose a lot of your speed, but you will wind up behind them, and as long as they miss, you pretty much get a free shot with an unflareable missile at them rear aspect. It's even more effective if you're carrying the R-27ET like I was doing right here, because you can see this F-15, he's like 3 kilometers away. I go ahead and fire the ET at him, and he is unable to flare it. If he had committed to a sharp turn to the side, he may have been able to flare in time, but he doesn't, and he eats the ET. The flanker's flight model is overall already very close, and you may be saying, well, Lee, it's not pulling as hard at low speeds as I would expect. And that's actually not an issue with the flight model itself, that's an issue with the instructor. So for those of y'all who don't know, when you're flying an aircraft in ARB, you're not actually experiencing the true flight model of the aircraft. You're not able to, you're using a mouse and keyboard, you're not using, a joystick. The instructors would actually translate your inputs into, proper stuff for the flight model to accomplish. And so that's why you'll see planes that will do absolutely insane maneuvers in sim controls that they're not able to do in just normal mouse and keyboard. The instructor will not allow it. You are able to force it into full real controls to do, whatever you'd like to do. So if you do need to pull at those lower speeds or you want a Cobra or whatever else, you can always switch it into full real. I just probably wouldn't recommend it for the vast majority of people because the instructor does save you from, flat spinning, for example, which you can do on full real controls. It's a very competent plane for ARB, though it does still have that lack of energy retention, and it also has a little bit of a hard time flaring missiles rear aspect, so that is just something to keep in mind. You kind of expect it with these two massive engines spaced really far apart, but especially R-73s, it basically can't flare them. The countermeasures are large caliber countermeasures, and it does fire them individually, which is a nice little advantage for survivability, but overall, it just doesn't really help you most of the time. One last thing, the flanker, and to be honest, planes in general seem to have a very tanky damage model this patch, and one complaint I have is that I'm not actually dead right now. I've tanked an AIM-7M, and my plane is totally fine. And I still have control of my HMD, which lets me fire an R-27ET, which intercepts his Sparrow, and then as he passes me, I'm going to R-73 him. It's my humble opinion that you should not be able to kill somebody when you are flat spinning to your death. This isn't really good gameplay, and it's also like no sane pilot would sit in the aircraft while they're going down like this, so I think that they should do something to prevent your HMD from actually working, and preferably weapons whenever you're in a state like this. In any case, hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below, and feel free to hit that subscribe button. Catch y'all next time. Peace.